We want to go into one of the most impactful early decisions that you will make in your financial relationship. And this is sort of a grenade, a hot topic. If you go onto social media, you will see this all over the place. And this is the meaty topic of, do you combine your finances or do you stay separate financially? And we've already answered this question for us many, many, many times. We would say, with just a few edge cases, that there is power in combining finances. So let's dig into that a little bit as a topic. Well, give me a case where you wouldn't combine finances. Why would you not combine finances with your spouse?
If one has any type of addiction or severe mental health issue, I've known of some people during a manic episode will go and spend thousands of dollars in an hour online these days. There has to be some accountability and some help there, or people that have a gambling addiction.
Yeah, I think that is the major edge case. So when we go into our views on combining finances, we're coming from a lens of, you are mentally, physically healthy in a relationship. Our view is you should combine finances. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you might go about combining those finances. But yeah, I think the basic edge case is, if there is addiction, if there is mental health issues, then by all means, keep your money separate, because that's how you protect each other. That's how you protect the relationship. It's not about protecting your assets. It's about protecting the relationship. If you combine in that scenario and it drains everything, then you're both in trouble. But if you can keep it separate, you have a chance with that. So yeah, so I think short of that, we're advocates for combining. Now, why? What does combining bring to us? We've already talked a bit about how transparency is super important. If you keep separate financial lives, if you keep separate checking accounts, you keep separate bills, you keep separate credit cards, transparency can be, and almost for sure is going to be, difficult. What are the positives of combining it?
There's power in having a shared goal. And when you see the shared account, you put in some, I put in some, watching it grow, it puts you on the same, heading in the same direction, working towards something together. There's power in that. That feels good.
Yeah, I agree. Where you spend your money is where your priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have joint accounts, joint transparency, you're not going to deviate without it being very obvious. So if we've agreed that we're executing toward this goal, and if our finances are shared and together and money goes out of the account, we have an opportunity to talk to each other and say, why did that go out? What happened? If you are keeping things separate, there's a higher risk of financial infidelity, money just not going towards shared goals, siphoning off. How do we deal with imbalances of earnings?
How do you and I deal with it?
Yeah, how do we deal with it?
We obviously know how much you make and how much I make, but everything goes into the same. I don't look at the amount that goes in one month and say, oh, Michael brought in this much and I brought in this much. And no, it's all commingled, and I feel like I own all of it with you and not just this portion.
Yeah, we have an income.
Correct.
You don't have an income and I have an income. We have an income.
Mm-hmm.
The family has an income and we budget off the income. Let's talk about a couple. I think this is a good segue into a couple different ways that you could combine finances. We are clearly all in, everything together. That is, I would argue, the cleanest, simplest way. And all of this assumes that you have a healthy relationship. And the number of times I hear the argument of, well, what if we get divorced? Yeah, it's a problem. What if this person, cleans out my bank accounts? Or what if this person does X, Y, and Z? Well, maybe that's someone you shouldn't be married to. Like, if you don't trust them with your finances, why do you trust them in other areas of your life? So we really encourage you to get to the point where everything is combined. That's I think the ultimate, it's the simplest. If you are 100% combined, then inequities in earning don't matter, because it all comes into one pot. As an aside, if it all comes into one pot, are there any downsides to that?
Well,
Any downsides. I didn't say big or small. Any
We talked
downsides.
about how I like to buy things around the holidays and around birthdays. And if there's something specific I buy that's from a specific store and you see in in our bank account that there was a withdrawal of this much, you probably have an idea of maybe what I got you. That kind of ruins the
Yeah, so
surprise.
the full transparency does have the challenge of it's full transparency. So we have had to get creative a little bit about big gift giving, which brings another topic to mind, which is where we set the threshold for individual spending and how we manage that is different. We have a very simple budget, as in we don't go down into the minutia of every single, thing. We have big buckets. We have a household bucket. We have a car repair bucket. We have a food bucket. We don't have a meals out and
Grocery store.
yeah, and we have an entertainment budget, but we don't have a date night and a movie night or we sort of go very big buckets, and we agree on those buckets before the month. And then some of those buckets you fully execute, and there's some other buckets that I manage. We also sort of have an agreed level of, if it's below this, we don't care about it.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to pick a number, but let's say it's a purchase that's below $100. We don't care about it. Just do whatever. Now, if it's going to blow up a bucket, then let's talk about it. But if it's within a bucket, neither of us care about it. And where that dollar line is, when we had very little money and had real debt relief goals, was different than where that line sits now. So that we do get a little bit of the freedom to spend inside those categories. And we've always had a little bit of your spending money, my spending money that's totally untracked. Although even that's changed over time, because back in the day, it was really important that we each had some autonomy on some money. Now we're just so aligned on these things that if there's something you want, just you get it within the framework of our budget. There are some negatives of being fully combined, but the synergies way outweigh that. Now, let's talk about a second way that you might combine, but not fully there. Another way that we hear and we see is that you might have shared finances for shared expenses, and then you keep your excess separate. So let's go with a real world example. Monthly expenses such as your mortgage, your utilities, car payments, whatever sort of you've agreed upon are shared household expenses, you contribute into an account and your funds are in that pays for those shared expenses. And then whatever above that amount that you earn stays in your private accounts, whatever they earn stays in their private accounts. A healthy way to go about that might be, how do we fund that account is proportionally. So let's say one partner makes $50,000. The other partner makes $100,000. That's three equal $50,000 parts. So the one partner who makes 50 would put in a third of the bills. The person who makes 100 would put in 2/3, right? That's a proportional way of doing it. And I think we see that work pretty well. And you have a much more autonomy there, because you still are keeping your resources and you can allocate your resources the way you want, but the household is taken care of. For me, I don't know why we would ever want to do something like that for combining, because if we call everything that stays in your personal accounts as excess, and excess goes toward long-term goals, or it goes towards spending and fun, or it goes to whatever your priorities are, why would I want to put it in a situation where one partner has significantly less resources than the other partner does? How are you going to plan joint celebrations or joint goals or all those sort of things with a severe financial inequity? And a lot of relationships have that. They have a big financial earnings imbalance. What are your thoughts on that?
I was going to
part of
say,
it?
I have seen very few people that they make the same amount of money. It's very unheard of, at least in the crowd that I roll with. And that's why I agree with you 100%, that doing the proportional piece, I think it might be good if you're living together, but you're not engaged, you're not married, maybe to pay for rent, to pay for those. I could kind of see that. There are some benefits to it there, but it doesn't feel like a partnership to me. And I know I mentioned partnership earlier, but it's really important. That's where the strength of the relationships come from, when you feel you're an equal partner in a strong relationship.
I fully agree. And I think third way of combining, which sort of leads to this, is that shared account and you both contribute to half the bills. And regardless of what you make. And I think that's, of the ways to combine, that's the absolute worst way to combine because there's no equity and synergy in there. That is a roommate agreement at that point where you're splitting bills. And to me, that's not a long lasting partnership. The example you just gave of proportional in roommates might make perfect sense, but managing it separately. So let's go to Taylor and Carter. Taylor started her professional career before Carter did. That's my daughter and my son-in-law. She was making a full income while he was still finishing school. I don't know the intimacy details of their budget, but I think she carried a heavier percentage of some of their shared expenses during that time. But she did it from her account and he paid from his account. They did not combine counts until they were married because the legal mess of combining. So that's a way to do it. And I think in dating and everything, perfectly reasonable. And even engagement, that's perfectly reasonable because you're not married yet. Things change once you get married. You are fully committed at that point. That's when you dive in and you create the synergy of combined finances. Before that, it all stays separate. And I would say the combined to just pay my half and your half, that's a roommate. That's not.
It's not a partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just in case we haven't driven this point home far enough, but another benefit of combining, how did that help you when you decided to stay home and spend a few years raising our daughters?
I think it would have, actually, I know it would be impossible to do that. If we had separate and I stopped working, there's no money coming in.
The pressure would have been to you to get back to work. And
Correct.
At the time, you didn't want to do that. You wanted to raise the family. You wanted to spend that time. You would have not had that luxury, right?
With us being in having everything combined and jointly managing things, it was a conscious decision and it was one that we could make. I don't think that's possible to go 100% no income coming in and still be able to live and have a kid on your hands. I had 2 kids on my hands.
Yeah, I don't know how families deal with that. I think that's an interesting. I think that actually leads to a good little point of let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
If you are not fully combined and you manage individually, how do you deal with times where unemployment? Let's say you go through a career change. Let's say you choose to stay home and have kids. How did you manage those? And did that put extra stress on your finances and your relationship? Or did you guys do great with that? I generally would like to know because I think that's an area where it's the most concrete. We can talk about all the goals and the shared visions and all the synergy that comes from there. And those are all absolutely real. But for me, the part of you taking the time to be without an income and raise the kids, like how would we have done that effectively without the synergy of that? All right, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, so let us know your thoughts. This is, in the financial world, this is probably, and with couples, this is probably one of the hottest topics. And I think we'll probably address in a future episode what happens when it goes wrong on the divorce side and how do you get out of that? And you've got some very sad stories of people who are stuck in relationships because they've let themselves get so far into stuck situations and finances being combined. But then you're talking edge cases of financial abuse in those cases. And just like if you have physical abuse in a relationship, if you've got financial abuse, that's a problem. Like it's going to be hard to get out of. All right. On that downer note.
Very uplifting. Yes.
Yeah. Well, aspirational.